This country is in a revolution. They're sick and tired of what they're getting, and I happen to be lucky enough to be part of it.
It has been said that when in the course of human events, an oppression so revolts its subject that it becomes necessary to alter or abolish the means of that tyranny. Is it that time when our Bill of Rights is defiled every day? When our adventures abroad threaten our security at home? When the Federal Reserve keeps our free nation enslaved by debt? When the people of the world tremble under the thumb of corporate imperialism? And now, our nation is drifting dangerously from freedom to fascism. So I have to ask, is it time?
And now, from the luxurious Albino Raccoon recording studios located in the Midwestern heart of America, it's the Last Voice for Liberty Network. And here is your host, The Mouth.
Greetings and salutations to all my fellow patriots. It is time once again for the Last Voice for Liberty Network. I am your host, The Mouth, back once again bringing you some more truth on this 19th day of November. It's a Monday, folks. Everybody loves them. You know I do. We got some interesting things, some good input from people on our Facebook pages. Some real patriots are out there, folks. You just got to look for them. So, I'm going to bring something up here about the voter fraud allegations that are going on all over the country, especially in Florida with Allen West. It's reported that Precinct 93 in the Allen West recount had 7 registered voters and 900 ballots cast. I mean, come on, folks. 7 registered voters, but 900 people cast a ballot. A gentleman by the name of Mark Thompson wrote that most Republicans have grown up in communities where IQs are over 100. There's a mom and dad, and the schools are free of drugs, rape, violence, gangs, and cheating is frowned upon. So when they encounter truly evil people, they're often perplexed and taken aback. Okay. I'm not going to get into this. This is highly Republican. This is what kills me. Highly touting how the Republicans are oh so great. And they're getting cheated out of these elections. Yeah, they may be getting cheated out of the elections. I wouldn't put it past the Obama campaign to cheat his way into the office again, because all the signs were pointing to he was getting ready to hit the door, possibly going to prison. But yet, Mitt Romney concedes, and the the GOP is not backing Allen West. Allen West is fighting his own cause for the recount. But the GOP's not backing him. And this weekend, Regina Rodriguez, a fan of our page and a great American patriot, brought us this little article that we found, explaining why the GOP isn't going to do anything about voter fraud. There's now compelling and undeniable evidence, folks, that major vote fraud has been perpetrated, in the November 2012 elections. Now, this is coming from the Fellowship of the Minds.wordpress.com. Check them out. Dr. Aylwin is the author of this article that I'm quoting from here. Screaming and the hollering about the voter fraud is to no avail, and no one is listening to them, and not even the Republican Party. The GOP is definitely not listening to anybody screaming about voter fraud, and here's why, folks. The Republican Party made an agreement 30 years ago with the Democratic Party not to ensure voting integrity and not to pursue suspected voter fraud. That's right. In fact, legally, the GOP cannot ensure voting integrity, nor can it prevent vote fraud. And this is the astounding reason, which, hey, this has been kept from the American people. Lots of people need to know about this. Because I'm basically a conservative person on most things. I'm actually a little bit more liberal, being a libertarian on some things than most liberals, but I'm also I'm quite a bit more conservative on most things than most conservatives. But I have a lot of conservative fans on our page and friends, on that keep complaining. Number one, about the voter fraud, and number two, about how this, Republicans are good and Democrats are bad and they're screwing us and bleed, bleed, bleed. But Politigym writes for the Gulag Bound, November 13, 2012, that during the weekly True to Vote webcast, Catherine Engelbrecht related a meeting that she had with Reince Priebus, the chairman of the Republican National Committee, asking what the GOP would do about voter integrity. Now the answer? Nothing. They're not legally able to, he says. So it goes back to the lawsuit 31 years ago in 1981. Now, we're going to read a little bit from an account on the Judicial View. There's following is going to be compiled from an account on there. It's a legal website that's specializing in court decision research and alerts. From the Democratic National Committee versus Republican National Committee, case number 09-4615. In 1981, during the gubernatorial election in New Jersey, a lawsuit was brought against the RNC, the New Jersey Republican State Committee, RSC, and three individuals, John A. Kelly, Ronald Kaufman, and Alex Hurtado, accusing them of violating the Voting Rights Act of 1965, 42 U.S.C. 1971-1973, and also violated the 14th and 15th Amendments to the Constitution of the United States. Now, a lawsuit was brought on by the Democratic National Committee, the New Jersey Democratic State Committee, and two individuals, Virginia L. Pagans and Lynette Monroe. The lawsuit alleged that the RNC and RSC targeted minority voters in New Jersey in an effort to intimidate them. Folks, I was 6 years old this time, so. The RNC created a voter challenge list by mailing sample ballots to individuals and precincts with a high percentage of racial or ethnic minority voters. Now, then the RNC put the names of individuals whose postcards were returned as undeliverable on the list of voters to challenge at these polls. Sound familiar? The RNC enlisted the help of off-duty sheriffs and police officers with National Ballot Security Task Force armbands to intimidate voters by standing at polling places in minority precincts during voting. Some officers allegedly wore firearms in a visible manner. Now, does this not sound like what the Black Panther Party was doing this year and 4 years ago? Sounds like it to me, standing outside polling places. What, 4 years ago was holding nightsticks. They're still standing out there again. They didn't have nightsticks this time, but hey, they're still standing out there intimidating voters. I wish one of them would have been in my fucking voting precinct standing outside. Because I'd started some shit. I'll tell you that right now. What the fuck are you doing standing out here loitering? I mean, really. What purpose are you serving standing outside? If you're not intimidating voters, why are you just standing out there? Oh, just hanging out? Now you're just loitering now? Do you not understand this? If you're just standing there, you've already voted, and you're just standing there still fucking just hanging outside. Pose like you're on post, like you're looking. It's a war. This is what the GOP did. The RNC, apparently, according to these allegations of why they brought this lawsuit in 1981, the GOP is doing the same thing that the Black Panther Party is doing for the Democratic Party this year and 4 years ago. Now, to settle the lawsuit in 1982, the RNC and RSC entered into an agreement or a consent decree, which is national in scope, limiting the RNC's ability to engage or assist in voter fraud prevention unless the RNC obtains the court's approval in advance. Now, the following is what the RNC, the RSC, and the consent decree agreed that they would do. in the future in all states and territories of the United States, they will A, comply with all applicable state and federal laws protecting the rights of duly qualified citizens to vote for the candidates of their choice. Sounds reasonable, right? That's what the law and the Constitution says. B, they're going, in the event that they produce or place any signs which are part of ballot security activities, voter integrity activities, cause said signs to disclose that they are authorized or sponsored by the party committees and any other committees participating with the party committees. C, they will refrain from giving any directions or permitting their agents or employees to remove or deface any lawfully printed and placed campaigns, materials, or signs. That was going on this year. But they signed this agreement between them 30 fucking years ago. They will refrain from giving directions or permitting their employees to campaign with restricted polling areas or to interrogate prospective voters as to their qualifications to vote prior to their entry to a polling place, which is what these pollsters do when they call and ask you if you're voting. I've explained it on here before, folks. They call, ask you if you're voting, and if you're not voting, then they go to the polling place where you should be in your precinct. It's very easy to look up, very easy to figure out. I don't even think you have to pay money to find it out. And since you don't need an ID to vote, all they do is go in there, say that they're you, and they vote. They will refrain from undertaking any ballot security activities in polling places or election districts where the racial or ethnic composition of such districts is a factor in the decision to conduct or the actual conduct of such activities there, and where a purpose or significant effect of such activities is to deter qualified voters from voting. And the conduct of such activities disproportionately in or directed towards a district that has substantial proportion of racial or ethnic populations shall be considered relevant evidence of the existence of such a factor or purpose. Folks, can you get any more racist than that paragraph right there? You cannot undertake ballot security activities or be part of ballot acts where racial or ethnic compositions of such is a fact. Well, so in black communities, we can't go in and ensure any voting integrity in there. In Chinese or Asian communities, you cannot go in and, nope. We can't go in there and ensure any voting integrity. Let's just leave all the doors open for voter fraud. That's what this whole decree of consent is saying. They will refrain from having personnel deputized as law enforcement personnel in connection with ballot security activities. That means we cannot ask the police. The Republican National Committee cannot ask the police to help. The RNC also agreed that the RNC, its agents, servants, and employees would be bound by this decree, whether acting directly or indirectly through other party committees. Still, once again, pertaining to the Republican Party. As modified in 1987, the consent decree defined ballot security activities to mean that ballot integrity and ballot security or other efforts to prevent, remedy voter fraud. Ballot security activities is pretty much ballot integrity. Since 1982, that consent decree has been renewed every year by the original judge, Jimmy Carter appointee, District Judge Dickinson R. DuBois. He's now 88 years old. This guy's long retired, but yet he comes back yearly for the sole purpose of renewing this 1982 order for another year. If the judge is retired, how can he come back and continue to renew a law? Why isn't this passed on to another judge who is unretired? In 2010, the RNC unsuccessfully appealed to vacate or modify the consent decree, Because they knew the Democrats had it fucking set and planned. Obama is screwing everything up in the country. He's purposely going against the Constitution and the will of the American people. There's no way he's going to get voted back in 2012 unless we steal it. Republican Party kind of figured on this one and realized that their time is about up. And it's because of shit like this. In Democratic National Committee versus Republican National Committee, case number 09-4615, March 8, 2000, never mind. I paid, our author here paid the Judicial Review $10 for the PDF for case number 09-4615 and uploaded the 59-page document to Freedom of the Mind's media library. It's got a link on this article. You go and check it out. Here's a summary of the appeal judge ruling filed on March 8, 2012. In 1982, the Republican National Committee and Democratic National Committee entered into consent decree, which is national in scope, limiting the RNC's ability to engage or assist in voter fraud prevention unless the RNC obtains the court's approval in advance. All right, RNC, if in 2010 you unsuccessfully are appealing this, obviously you know that they're going to try and steal it. Why didn't you obtain the court's, if you have to obtain the court's approval to investigate, why didn't you do it beforehand? Maybe they wouldn't have tried to do it so much. Maybe, you know. We call it preventative maintenance where I come from. The RNC appeals from a judgment of the United States District Court for the District of New Jersey denying in part the RNC's motion to vacate or modify the consent decree. Although the District Court declined to vacate the decree, it did make modifications to it. The RNC argues that the District Court abused its discretion by modifying the decree as it did and by declining to vacate the decree. For the following reasons, we're going to affirm the District Court's judgment. So, in other words, he just said, yep, they're gonna fuck you guys. Surprise! The judge who denied the RNC's appeal to vacate the 1982 consent decree is an Obama appointee, Judge Joseph Greenway, Jr. of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit. Why wouldn't he? Guy Benson of townhall.com points out in the last Tuesday's election, Obama won by 406,348 votes in 4 states. Florida, he won by 73,858. Ohio, 103,481. Virginia won 15,910 and Colorado won 13,099. Those 4 states with a collective margin of 406,348 votes for Obama add up to 69 electoral votes. Had Romney won 407,000 or so additional votes in the right proportion in those states, he would have garnered 275 total electoral votes. Not to mention that the fact that Romney was probably the weakest candidate you could possibly run against Obama. Here's a guy who's campaigned for office for, last 8 years now? And he ain't won shit! But he was so electable and Ron Paul wasn't. All 4 states showed that Romney was ahead in the days leading up to the election. But on November 6th, Romney lost all 4 states by a substantial margin, all of which have precincts that inexplicably went 99% for Obama, had voter registrations that exceeded their population, and had experienced problems with the voting machines. This is where he lost. They stole it. It's obvious. The election was stolen by the Democrats via voter fraud. Despite all the evidence of fraud, the Republican Party has been strangely silent about it, haven't they? And now you know why. The RNC and the DNC made their consent decree 30 years ago in 1982. Now the agreement in effect gives a carte blanche to the Democratic Party to commit vote fraud in every voting district across America. that has, in the language of the consent decree, a substantial proportion of racial or ethnic populations. Just like I said, folks. It gave them an open door to commit it. The Democratic Party knew this 30 years ago, which is more than enough time to put in place a place to identify and groom their perfect candidate. In the words of Senator Harry Reid in 2008, a light-skinned black Democrat who has no Negro dialect unless he wanted to have one. Now here's the point. Being a black Democrat, this perfect candidate would get all the support of almost all black Americans. He got 96% in 2008. And other racial minorities as well. 2/3 of the Hispanic vote in 2008. Being a light-skinned black with no Negro dialect, quote-unquote, this perfect candidate would get the support of white Americans perpetually guilt-ridden about America's original sin of slavery. It doesn't matter if this perfect candidate has dubious constitutional eligibility to be president. They would see to it that his original birth certificate, if there is one, would never see the light of day. That one they put up on whitehouse.gov has been proven time over to be falsified. It's a forgery. It's a fake. The same with his other documents. His passports, his schools, college records, draft registration, medical records. You're never going to know why Obama has that very long scar running from one side of his head over the crown onto the other side. You're never going to know it. Why do we steal his medical records? No, I mean, that's my question. What do you have to hide there? What, you got the AIDS? You got the crabs? Now we understand the significance of the account that Tom Fife wrote during a 2008 presidential campaign. Fife was a U.S. government contractor, and he claims that in 1992, while he was visiting Moscow, a woman with undying allegiance to Soviet communism, the Soviet Union had recently collapsed on December 31st, 1991, and she told him that a black man named Barack, born of white American woman and an African male, was being groomed by communists to be and would be elected president of the United States. Since they already knew about that decree, all they had to do was figure out how they wanted to, which person they wanted to groom for it. Now we finally understand the cryptic remark made in May 2010 by the Nation of Islam leader Louis Farrakhan. Said Obama was selected before he was elected. They knew about it. In 2008, this perfect candidate won the presidential election. And despite his many failures in his first term, he got reelected in 2012 for a second term via massive voting fraud. You can't tell me it wasn't. But nothing would be done about the vote fraud because of that consent decree signed by the RNC 30 years ago. Now, the Republican Party, folks, is signed its own death warrant with this. The U.S. two-party system is dead too. The sooner we, the voters, recognize this, the better off we're going to be. Because the question that remains is whether the American Republic is also dead, and should not be. I, of course, as everyone knows, am a libertarian. Disenfranchised Republican voters, disenfranchised Democrat voters who hear this story, read it, read the court pages, read the case. They wrote a decree between the two of them to say, hey, we can fucking pretty much put whoever we want in office, and it's not going to matter because we can use voter fraud, and it'll never be investigated by our other party. Why do you think they don't want a third party coming up? All third parties just screw everything up. Well, yeah, because they'll have the legal ability to challenge voter fraud. We've got to get this word spread out, folks. The Republican Party just does not care about voter fraud. They didn't want it. This whole thing has been kept from the American people for so long. They didn't want anybody to figure it out. Now, I'm looking at this as a libertarian and looking at this as an opportunity to bring not just the Republicans who don't, well, if they're not even going to investigate these fucking assholes, then what's the point? But Democrats who are finding this out and saying, well, that ain't right. And that's not the way America's run. Because there are Democrats out there that just voting along party lines because they think they have to. Or they're actually believed and duped that the Democratic Party is trying to do something good for them, when in fact, it's the opposite. Now, bringing more disenfranchised people to the liberty movement is only going to make it stronger. And I believe that the author, as a majority of Americans, are either misinformed or wholly uninformed about the truth of the liberty message. The Libertarian Party has signed no such accord and therefore legally able to bring litigation against both parties for fraud and against the American people. As I read through the comments on that article, the Dr. Awen, the author of the article, actually said that the Libertarian Party isn't serious about running. Don't jump to them because they're not serious about it. Now, whether or not people use the Libertarian Party as their organizational method to unite against this tyranny is going to remain to be seen. But, folks, the fact remains that organization and unification is what we need to defeat this monolithic government. Okay? The Tree of Liberty provides shelter for all of us. And we need to explain that to our fellow Democrats and Republicans. And tell them, hey, the Tree of Liberty is here, and it has room for all of you underneath of it. Black, white, yellow, green, purple, it doesn't matter. The Tree of Liberty has room for you can be all around the world. The Tree of Liberty has room for everyone under there. There is shade from the fires of evil. But it must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. Now, this day and age, we've advanced so much as a civilization, as people. They're using barbaric forms and violence to get a point across is now a dying facade, folks. We don't need to use that. Violence is what the powers that be will use against us. That defines them between evil and why we are right. We need to use our intelligence to refresh the Tree of Liberty with the blood with political blood, non-violently, with our voices and power as the American public. Let us rise against this tyranny with the Constitution as our guide and protector. When I first saw this, I knew I was going to do it on this show today. I saw this article a couple days ago. I tried to get our engineers in the studio, but for some reason, they like to sleep. I've started drinking coffee again, and so sleep is a passé thing. There's too much to know and too much to find out and too much information that needs to be spread that's not being spread by anybody else. I have passed this message on to thousands of people so far via Facebook and social media, Twitter, and we're going to continue to do so. Because I believe it can be used as a lightning rod to return the American people to the fundamentals of liberty. I want to thank Regina Rodriguez for bringing this to our attention. Right, all credit needs to go to her for opening the eyes. And see, that's what we do for each other in the liberty movement. We open each other's eyes daily. Daily. That's what spreading all this information is about. So then you're informed and you know. I'll tell you this, Regina. We at Last Voice of Liberty salute you. And thank you very dearly for giving us this information. Folks, the albino raccoon has actually been giving me the finger, and I think his head is turning purple. His brain might explode. I need to get to a commercial break. We'll be right back with more on the Last Voice of Liberty Network.
Listen up man, I'll tell you who I am. Just another stupid American. You don't wanna listen, you don't wanna understand. So finish up your drink and go home. I come from the land of Ben Franklin, Twain and Poe, where all women. Oh, you're spreading Ellington, the country that I love. But it's a land of the slaves and the Ku Klux Klan. Hey, Martin Riot and the Great Depression. Joe McCarthy, Vietnam, sickest joke I know. Listen up man, I'll tell you who I am. know the truth. It's all you say that you got pride. Now the cops got tanks, cause the kids got guns. Shrinks, pushing pills on everyone. Cancer from the ocean, cancer from the sun.
Hi out there, all you sexy men. This is Eugene Roddenham. I'd like to take you up on the bridge and throw you down in the water, and you can do a fucking sailor dive. And then I'm gonna come down there and I'm gonna rub seaweed all over your ass and your neck and shit. Oh, it'll be so nice. Oh, what's that? You wanna listen to the Last Voice for Liberty Network instead? I suppose there, sweetie pants.
Who are these monsters inside my head? They give me uneasy feelings. They tell me go to sleep, just go to bed. But I'm awake and I'm not dreaming. What can I do to make a change? 'Cause I just wanna be free. I don't want a police state. I just want love and liberty. Call up a friend, send a message. Tweet it up or make a YouTube video. Speak your mind with education. The knowledge it starts to grow. So make a YouTube video.
Welcome back again, folks, to the Last Voice for Liberty Network. I am your host, the Mouth, laughing and scratching at you on this fine day. Got some great stories coming up here. We're going to expose how our glorious president, Mal Obama, has threatened 14 United States governors with arrest. Arresting them. Yeah, threatening to arrest them. What have these guys done so wrong? Well, a chilling report from the Foreign Military Intelligence Directorate, either way, what's the difference? Prepared for Prime Minister Putin, our Foreign Military Intelligence Directorate, that's usually prepared for Prime Minister Putin in Russia, warns today that the United States President Barack Obama has served on 14 U.S. governors national security letters, warning that if their actions in attempting to form what are so-called state defense forces are not halted, that they will face immediate arrest for the crime of treason. Isn't that interesting? The use of national security letters, NSLs, in the United States was authorized by the Patriot Act law. Interesting. That was enacted after September 11, 2001 attacks, and forbids anyone from receiving them from even acknowledging their existence. And it was reauthorized by Obama's rubber-stamped Congress this past February over the objections of both civil and human rights groups, who warned they mimic similar type government security notices enacted under both the former German Nazi and Soviet communist regimes. We are repeating history right now, folks. The American government is repeating history, what the Soviet communists did and what the Nazi regime did. All in the beginning, if you look before these big atrocities that were caused by the Nazis and the communists, you look at what led up to them gaining power. They didn't just all of a sudden walk in one day and go, I'm in charge. No, they took steps, the same steps and policies, and sometimes even verbiage in these bills that they're passing, as the Nazi regimes did, as the communists did. To the issue of angering Obama against these state governors, the report continues is their attempt to reestablish what are called state defense forces, which are described as follows. State Defense Forces, SDF, also known as State Guards, State Military Reserves, or State Militias in the United States, are military units that operate under the sole authority of a state government They're not regulated by the National Guard Bureau, nor are they part of the Army National Guard of the United States. State defense forces are authorized by state and federal law and are under the command of the governor of each state. State defense forces are distinct from their state's National Guard in that they cannot become federal entities. That means, they're sending our National Guard, which makes all sense in the world, sending National Guard over to fight in the wars. Now, National Guard, they should be guarding our nation, not going to other nations. State militias keep armed state soldiers under the control of our state governments to stay here and protect us, which is a necessity, especially when the threat of UN troops being brought onto American soil has become such a reality now. State defense forces are authorized by state and federal law and under the command of governors of each state. Now, the federal government recognizes state defense forces under 32 U.S.C. number 109, which provides that state defense forces as a whole may not be called, ordered, or drafted into the armed forces of the United States, thus preserving their separation from the National Guard. So if they've got, the federal government recognizes that they can't take state militias and order and draft them into the armed forces of the United States, then how can it be treasonous to have a state militia? Now, important to note that Obama, President of the United States, is also its most powerful military leader, known by the term of Commander-in-Chief, as authorized by the Militia Act of 1903 to federalize his individual states' National Guard forces, putting them under his command. Something he does not have the power to do with state defense forces, which means there's somebody, he's not in total control. Okay? Obama's fear of these state defense forces, this report says, rests with not having power over them. Obviously, like I said, and with the bulk of the U.S. military forces he does control being stretched to the near breaking point with the ongoing wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, and upcoming in Syria, Libya, let's see, pretty much every fucking country over there. They would leave these state military forces under control of these governors in de facto control of the United States. So, ergo, as I was just saying, he's got our military, real military, including our National Guard, we're supposed to be guarding our nation, but are out everywhere else. All across the globe, spread out thin. America is weak right now. We are open to attack, and he knows it. That's what they want. We don't want that. And forming state militias is the right thing to do. And he's afraid of that because he's not in control. That means when he rushes in there, whatever attack they want, whether it's bringing UN troops to enforce the gun ban they want to put, it's not going to happen if state militias are there to protect the rights of the people and to protect the Constitution. The two U.S. governors spearheading this rebellion against Obama, this report states, are the Republican opposition party governors of Minnesota, Tim Pawlenty, and Texas, Rick Perry, both of whom have a deep fear that their president is destroying their nation. And they are right. I didn't agree with a whole lot that Tim Pawlenty and Rick Perry said while they were campaigning for president. But this is something that I do agree with them in. Governor Pawlenty's fear of Obama is that since he took office, he has appeased America's enemies, while at the same time shunning some of America's most stalwart allies, especially Israel. We'll talk a little bit more about Israel tomorrow. Governor Pawlenty recently castigated Obama for abandoning the U.S. missile defense plan for Europe by saying, the lessons of history are clear. Appeasement and weakness did not stop the Nazis, it did not stop the Soviets, and it did not stop the terrorists before 9/11. We must stand strong with allies like Israel and Eastern Europe in the face of growing challenges to our national security, he says. Governor Perry has blasted Obama and warned his fellow Texans that the president is hell-bent on socialism and is punishing his state by dumping tens of thousands of illegal Mexican immigrants into their cities and small towns. Governor Perry further warned Texans that if Barack Obama's Washington doesn't stop being so oppressive, Texans might feel compelled to renounce their American citizenry and secede from the nation. And as you know, all those secession petitions for all 50 states have been filed. So Rick Perry wasn't lying. Now, note, following the end of the Civil War, the rights of the individual U.S. states to secede from the Union was heard by their Supreme Court in a case called Texas versus White in 1869, and who ruled that the Constitution did not permit states to secede from the United States, and that the ordinances of secession and all the acts of legislatures within seceding states intended to give effort to such ordinances were absolutely null, through revolution or through consent of the states. However, the decision did allow some possibility of divisibility. Okay? Now, Obama, fearing a revolution against him by the states, this report continues, says, moved swiftly against him, including nationalizing nearly all National Guard forces in Governor Pawlenty's Minnesota in what is being described as their state's largest call-up of troops since World War II. Other reports coming from the United States are stating that Obama has also nationalized the National Guard forces in Georgia, Alabama, Kansas, and perhaps Texas as well. Although Obama may have taken from these dissident states their National Guard forces, the governors of the states of Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, and Virginia still have under their sole command their state defenses forces to go against U.S. federal forces. Now, it's important to note in this report is stating that there is no U.S. laws prohibiting National Guard troops from also joining their state's defense forces, but it would create a dilemma for those soldiers should they be called to service by both at the same time. Because of the act in 1903, the president has the power to call up National Guards to use for federal missions. Now, American soldiers during their Civil War, the great majority, of them, choosing to serve their states instead of their federal government. It's that same dilemma came up. Now, to Governor Pawlenty's fears of Obama appeasing America's enemies while at the same time harming its long-standing allies, there remains no doubt that during this past week alone, he has put Israel's security in grave danger by releasing previously classified U.S. documents relating to their nuclear program. What did he need to do that for? Now, while at the same time, he is removing sanctions on Russian arms makers that are supplying Iran. Now, we've covered before that President Ahmadinejad of Iran is not against the Jews. Pretty interesting. And he's met with, I've files of him meeting with Jewish leaders and rabbis. And they're all getting along. So somebody's lying about something here. Now, whether or not that could be a lie. Maybe it is. You never know. You can't tell anymore. You've got to dig and dig and dig and find the truth. And especially when it comes to stories about foreign relations and things like that. When we're trying to restrict and put sanctions on, so much sanctions on Iran, saying, oh, you can't have nuclear, you can't have nuclear power, you can't have nothing. Is Iran really saying, well, fuck you? We're going to get this power just to kill everyone? I don't think so. That makes no sense. No logical sense comes around it. Okay? Now, Obama this week, and even Russian military analysts are calling insane, has said that he decided to pre-announce to the world once secret American ballistic missiles test sites and satellite launches. So now he's just going to tell everybody where all our shit is, too. To the address Governor Perry's fears of Obama socializing the United States, there remains no doubt either. As we can read, as reported yesterday by the USA Today news service, paychecks from private businesses shrank to their smallest share of personal income in U.S. history during the first quarter of this year, a USA Today analysis of government data finds. Now, at the same time, government provided benefits from Social Security, unemployment insurance, food stamps, and other programs rose to a record high during the first quarter of 2010. Now, those records reflect a long-term trend that's accelerated by the recession and the federal stimulus program to counteract the downturn. The result is a major shift in the source of personal income from private wages to government programs. And an even worse move against his own people who are still struggling to survive the growing global economic collapse. New reports from the United States are stating that a secret program found hidden in Obama's socialist health care law, called the Community Living Assistance Services and Support Act, the CLASS Act, is about to take from them another $150 to $250 a month from their paychecks, forcing tens of millions more of them into abject poverty and debt slavery. The final outcome of these events, folks, is not in our knowing, all right? Other than to remind these Americans of Dr. Igor Panarin's 2008 prediction of the fate lying in store for them, as we can read reported by London's Telegraph news service in their article titled, U.S. Will Collapse and Break Up, the Russian Analysis Predicts. It says, Igor Panarin, a professor at the Diplomatic Academy of the Russian Foreign Affairs Ministry, said the economic turmoil in the U.S. has confirmed his long-held belief that the country was heading for extinction in its present form. In an interview with the Russian newspaper Izvestia, he outlined how the U.S. would divide along ethnic and cultural lines. Okay? There are the Pacific Coast with its growing Chinese population, the increasingly Hispanic South, independence-minded Texas, there's the Atlantic Coast, and a central state with a large Native American population. The northern states where he maintains Canadian influence is strong. But I don't quite understand what that means. Why, because we like to hunt and fish? Alaska could be claimed by Russia, he said, claiming that the region was only granted on lease after all. He said the country's breakup would be accelerated by rising unemployment and Americans losing their savings. The dollar isn't secured by anything, which is true. The country's foreign debt has grown like an avalanche, and this is a pyramid which has to collapse. Now, to all those Americans believing that they will be able to defend themselves against the fast-approaching onslaught meant to destroy them, they need to think again. Because even as I'm speaking these words, Obama through the United Nations is preparing to disarm them all under the UN Treaty on Arms Control that he ordered his government to sign. The late great American dissident comedian George Carlin, one of my faves, folks, George Carlin, the man. He once said it's called the American dream because you have to be asleep to believe it. I just hope that all these people wake up before it's all lost. And that's what we need to do. That's our point here on this show. Is to wake you up, let you know. This is what they're doing. If you don't believe me, look it up. Folks, I spend hours a day reading news and investigating on news reports as to their validity and what they're doing. Okay? What I put into this hour-long program here is nothing compared to everything else that I study. I do it because I want to. If you just take a few minutes out of your day to challenge what I say, look up what I'm talking about. Just on one subject. 10, 15 minutes at the most. Instead of playing Angry Birds or Words with Friends. Take 10, 15 minutes to, hey, is this asshole the mouth lying? These guys full of crap or what? Look it up. Do some research, folks. If you don't believe me and think I'm a lying SOB, get on my page. Get on our website, www.lastvoiceforliberty.webs.com. Get on our Facebook page. Get on our Twitter account. Tell us. Argue with me. Believe me, I want someone to prove me wrong. I do not want this to be the reality, but the fact remains, folks, it is. It's like a shitty science fiction movie. They're taking us down the road to ruin and telling us we gotta like it on the way. Well, not this little black duck. They're not gonna pluck my feathers and take my freedom away without me standing up and fighting. And I'm not gonna let them do it to any of you without standing up for you people. Just because you're not awake doesn't mean that I don't care about you. Just because you're not awake doesn't mean that you don't deserve to be fought for. That's what we do this show for. To wake people up. Spread it on to your friends. Spread it on to anybody who will listen. I mean, come on, people. If we don't get it out, and we don't get this out to the rest of the American public, before long, all will be lost. And all will be lost in a violent, bloody war. The best way to avoid war is to be prepared for it. And if you can non-violently awaken the public and unite them against what is blatant tyranny, folks, then no government in the world can stop us. No tyranny in the world can survive. It never does. Socialism hasn't ever worked. Anywhere. But hell, let's give it one more shot. We haven't tried it here yet. Maybe it'll work on this continent. Is that your reasoning? Didn't work over in Europe. It didn't work in it's not working out too well in Russia. So let's try it on America. Maybe in America it'll work. Are you kidding me? Communism and socialism is wrong, folks. It prohibits any type of individual freedom or choice or prosperity. It always has, it always will. Sooner we come together and unite against this tyrannical government, the sooner we will be free once again. And our Constitution, our forefathers can look upon us with pride once again. Because I guarantee you they're not looking at us that way today. We'll be back tomorrow with more on how our liberties are being stolen, more on this exposing this tyranny, and more freedom from the last voice for Liberty Network.
When injustice becomes law, resistance becomes duty. The utmost manifestation of love and devotion to America is today, as it always has been, resistance of tyranny.